Good morning and welcome to Sharing the Burden. This is Scott, your host, and I'm with Home on the Hill, two of the key players in there, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Well, my name is Kathy Mochnacki. I'm a mother, caregiver of somebody with serious mental illness, and I'm also a former social worker in the mental health field. And my journey began with a diagnosis of serious mental illness for my son. And in the last decade plus, I have experienced a journey which unfortunately has been a little painful and certainly very different from the experience I had as a professional social worker in the field. My journey, I think, has been insightful, and I can see where there are gaps in the system. So I feel that that has informed my work with Home on the Hill.
What about you, Maggie?
Well, my name is Maggie, and I'm a mom of someone with serious schizophrenia, and it's been very long journey so far. It's been 10 years, and my son would have periods when he was well and periods when he was extremely unwell. Mm-hmm. He ended up committing a crime and is now in long-term care. He finally got the services he needed once he committed the crime, and now he's in Ontario Shores and starting to be quite stable. So I got involved with Home on the Hill to try to find long-term housing for him. Unfortunately, that has been a long journey for us, and we are hoping to get there soon. I feel that there hasn't been a lot of services available for them. There's a lot of talk about connecting you to services, but the services don't seem to exist, just connections to services. So it's been very frustrating. So I decided that the best way to actually get services is to make my own. So we have found a recreation therapist who is really eager and has really connected well with our kids. So we have that programming going on right now. Unfortunately, it's just through Zoom right now, and it's not near as effective as in-person activities. Also, we tried to start a cooking program to teach the kids good cooking skills, and so when they are independent, that they can help themselves or work with somebody who can to cook. We have art programming that is a good way to express how they sometimes can't put into words. So we have art therapy as well, a trained art therapist.
I think that's a great idea. I know that without expression, there's not much healing in this world. I was just thinking, what a price to have to pay to get someone the services they need is to almost put them in a corner where they got to do something bad. So they end up, as you were saying, with your son committing a crime so that he could get the services he needed to help him with wellness and recovery and so on. That's pretty... That pretty well spells it all out, doesn't it?
The current mental health system is not there to address serious mental illness. We know that because we don't have enough hospital beds for people to stay in hospital to ensure that they're well. I know that because I've had to fight premature discharge myself about 10 years ago. We don't have adequate supportive housing. We have a mental health act that's not realistic and doesn't acknowledge anosognosia. So our loved ones are offloaded into the penal system. And also the recovery model, I'm a trained social worker. The recovery model has got some excellent points, but it does not address the people who are not well enough to ask for help. And, the recovery model asks that people voluntarily ask for help. So that provides quite a barrier to many of our loved ones. So Home on the Hill actually is focused on the needs of the family who are currently doing the supportive housing and are currently doing the day programming. And, that's what we're doing right now because of the absence of these very necessary necessary services.
I just wanted to clarify that anosognosia is the lack of awareness that you have a mental illness. So often people are paranoid and have these fears, irrational fears and thoughts, and they think they're normal. They don't believe that it's a sign of an illness. Like they think they have a good reason to be paranoid. And so that's why it's difficult for them to access help, because I don't think they need the help.
Keeping the family together, in essence, is a necessity if a family is going to work through something, isn't it?
We definitely feel the family is the first line of support with somebody with a mental illness. I mean, I've talked to psychiatrists and he says those that have families are the ones that do quite well or better than most, because they have a support system. Many people that don't have families end up on the streets because they don't have a backup support system. So we try to relieve the burden of the family by providing programming for the kids, because they are very isolated. I mean, that's one of the terrible things about the illness, is that they become withdrawn and socially isolated and have nothing to do to fill their time. So they end up ruminating and becoming more ill. So our point is really to keep them socially engaged and trying to find something meaningful for that person. So there's different things that are meaningful for different people. So for some it's music, and so we have a music program. And for some it's art, and so we have both art therapy and art expression. And for other people, it's just getting out with the guys and doing some fun activities. So we have the recreation therapist who does that with them. If we find something else that people feel excited about, well, then we try to, if we have 3 people, then we try to build a program around something that they like to do. The idea is to keep them engaged, to want to be part of life instead of withdrawing into their room and becoming unwell again.
One of the things I've seen in mental illness, a lot of parts of mental illness anyway, a person, the mentally ill, if you want, person will have a passion for something. And oftentimes that passion is not recognized. It's often an individual or an introverted type of person who takes on a sense of they're a loner. And, and loners are loners, and there always will be loners. And it's very difficult to draw them into any sort of, hang with 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 people. They're too uncomfortable to function in that sort of a thing. But in their passion, it doesn't seem to matter what's going on or how many or who, their passion is totally absorbing. Is that something that's considered in these types of programs?
I think that that's true. Some people just prefer their own company, and that's okay, so long as they're meaningfully engaged in something. It's when they're not meaningfully engaged in any activity, they're just in their room pacing or obsessing about something. But if they're doing something like, if they're doing leather work, or if they're tuning guitars, or if they're walking dogs, if they have a passion, then we consider that a good program to start into, even by themselves. So for instance, one person, we got a dog therapist to come and bring their dog, and that kind of drew the person out. So then they became a dog walking now. It's still over time though, it needs to develop. You can't just do your passion. You need to go the next step and maybe build it into a job, because it doesn't feel as rewarding after time if it doesn't lead anywhere. So again, it's keeping stuff people that's the important part.
With the people in jail, and I'll mention this special unit in this ladies' jail I spent a lot of time in. And it's intensive management therapy, and it's catering totally to the mentally ill and the more severe mentally ill cases within the system. They somehow have to feel, they got to feel loved. They got to feel loved. And I mean, and not words, but it's got to be there. And when it's there, things happen.
As a social worker, but also as a person in a grassroots organization, I think generally grassroots organizations are driven by caring. You know, they're driven by passion, they're driven by concern and empathy. I think kindness is the one thing that we all need. We need for people to be kind. And sadly, many of us have memories of not being treated in a very kind way and seeing our loved ones not being treated in a very kind way. So I think, Scott, you've really hit the nail on the head. Kindness is the most efficient way of helping somebody.
One of the things that Home on the Hill does well is that we have the same person working with people, so that it takes time to build a relationship. And so if you have constantly changing workers, then you don't have a relationship. So what we try to do is build relationships with the worker, have the same worker with the kids, and that way the kids get to know each other in the group and also the worker. And so there's a bond that develops, and that's where you can work forward on. When there's no bond, it's hard to advance, because people have to feel safe before they can explore new things. So I think that that's one of the criteria of our program, is that there has to be a good connection between the person that's ill and the program worker, so that there's effective programming going on.
That's what our people need, is a nurturing relationship. And I think that, Maggie certainly expresses that, and also our recreation therapist, who you'll meet next time, Tracy, she certainly nurtures a helpful relationship. And also she's very positive, which I think is a great thing. You know, as you meet somebody that's upbeat, that notices the qualities that individuals have that are often not noticed by the mainstream. And we as family members are attuned to the needs of our loved ones. We know when the mood changes. You know, the 24/7 experience of living under the same roof with somebody who has a serious mental illness is a very sort of educational experience. It would be beneficial if the system service providers would work collaboratively with us, because we have a lot to offer. So we're really aware and attuned to the needs of the people that we serve.
Ladies, peer workers, peer development, how does that work in the Home on the Hill and the family aspect?
When the kids go to their group activities, they tend to have the same people at the group, and we keep the groups small, like 3 to 4 people. And the reason is that with small groups, you have more interaction, and they develop a bond, and it's that bond that makes us human. And I think that having that bond with other people with the same or similar problems makes you feel supported and makes you feel heard, because the other person understands what it's like to have those kind of issues. So we find it at Home on the Hill that when our kids are together with the same small group, that they start to worry about the other person. They start to build friendships, build bonds, as I said before, and it helps them to be able to move forward and to risk doing things that they haven't done in the past, and to try new things with the support of their friends.
And I was thinking the only thing with a small group is when you get 1 or 2 that for whatever reason don't want to fit, and I know like it's pretty hard to find 1 or 2 more, isn't it, to to fill a gap like that. So I don't know, any way around that?
Well, when we have people that don't want to be with other people, we try to just have a therapist and the person, and like for some people, going for walks with one other person is really healing, and it can be their form of connection to the world is through nature, and I think that's very valid, because it's keeping you grounded. That we're trying to focus on. If being with other people doesn't make them feel secure, then maybe being out in nature and just going for walks is a good way to keep them grounded as well.
Our recreation therapist, when she does meet on a one-to-one basis, for the purpose of having the people get used to the idea of a peer group, and also having them helping them connect with others in the group. So we do recognize that not necessarily will people in a group get along, but we've kind of taken that into consideration. I also like to say that some of the things that our adult kids have to do are unusual compared with a regular person who doesn't have a mental illness. I'm just thinking right now, we're in COVID, in COVID, the restrictions on mobility alone have caused problems. Like I'm dealing here with, somebody who's really cooped up. That is really a very stressful situation. So there's times when, people have to take PRNs, medication to address their feelings of crisis. And when they learn that somebody else has PRNs, you know what a PRN is a pill that you take if you need it, if you're, experiencing a crisis. If our adult kids know that other people are using this strategy, then it seems to be okay, So people can learn from each other, learn from their peers, learn how other people approach some of the things that they've needed to do to keep well. And so that, that's really helpful for everybody. I think one of the most helpful things for a person is to realize that they're helping somebody else. So I think the concept of peer help is very powerful.
Thank you both very much. Thank you for representing Home on the Hill. And I do look forward to Tracy and who's coming on, Maggie or Kathy on Friday?
Maggie and Tracy.
Maggie and Tracy. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing both of you guys. And Kathy, I'm sure we'll talk again soon and get a third show for down the road so we can talk of what we're doing with all the information we shared here today. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, ladies. Thanks very much. Been my pleasure. Bye for now.